Hey, I'm TJ and I'm a clown that draws. An age-old artist tradition is to redraw old art as sort of a progress check, as it gives you a little confidence boost whenever you feel like you haven't really improved that much. And I am in dire need of a confidence boost. So I scoured through some of my art over the years, and there were many good candidates, including this little gem from 2011. I love the nonsensical outfit, the fact that you can tell I drew this on one layer, and the little "hope you like it" smiley face I scribbled on, just in case anyone on DeviantArt even dared speak ill of it. For transparency, I did actually start redrawing this one, but I kinda lost steam, so I decided to look at other pieces to see if anything else stood out to me. And I kept coming across drawings of these two, all the way back to 2013. I have to admit, after being inoculated into the cult of D&D, I kind of neglected all of my other OCs and their stories. So I decided, you know what? Let's give these two some love. One thing that all my older artworks have in common is an absolute lack of backgrounds. So I wanted to showcase what I've learned over the years and do a fun piece with these characters as well as a full background. And although I'm by no means an expert, I believe that there's no better way to learn than by doing. First, I redrew the characters so I could better establish their faces, body types, clothes, and color palettes. The one I'm drawing first is Katie, short for Katerina. The universe where this story is set is one where magic exists, but in a bit of an urban fantasy setting. Magic is openly practiced, but only by those with licenses and the money and status to practice it. This world's higher powers have worked very hard over the centuries to indoctrinate people into believing that if your magical abilities aren't nurtured from a very young age, they completely fizzle out and you're forever unable to do magic. And the only way to cultivate these abilities in a safe and legal manner is to enroll your children into thaumaturgy academies, which are essentially very expensive and hard to get into boarding schools. Those who dare to practice magic without a license are quickly prosecuted and eliminated, deemed dangerous to society, and their families are made into outcasts, investigated, and often jailed or put to death as well. All of this is done under the guise of protecting the general public and keeping the peace. Enter Katie, who most refer to as an illegal magic practitioner, but she prefers the term unconventional witch. Though, to be frank, nobody refers to her as anything, as she's got enough wits about her to practice her craft covertly. Her father began teaching her as a child, without her mother's knowledge. After walking in on them one evening, she promptly left in disgust and fear. Her father later gifted her her first and only magic book, which he haphazardly handwrote and put together before mysteriously disappearing during her teen years. She doesn't have abandonment issues, I swear. And so, as a teen with no family and nothing to her name, she dedicated herself to studying and understanding what her father left her as best as she could. Now, as a young adult, between part-time jobs during the day and magical jobs done in secrecy during the night, she makes do. She mostly specializes in imbuing items with magic to achieve a certain desired result, like a candle that heats up a whole room when lit, or a cooking knife that never goes blunt, as to make sure nobody actually sees her practicing magic in case she ever gets caught. And then, one fateful night, as she's out for delivery, she gets caught by a pair of agents working for the Bureau of Magical Defense, who'd been tipped off about strange things happening in an area with no licensed magic users. They promptly chase after her, and in her adrenaline-fueled state, she ends up running herself into a dead end. Backed into a corner, and not knowing what to do as she'd never before used magic to defend herself, she uses a spell she'd always been too fearful to try. A summoning spell. There's a huge boom, smoke and fog, and time freezes around her. She sees a single enormous eye, and hears a voice asking, "What are your terms?" She shakily replies, "Help me." The voice asks, "What will you give me in return?" And Katie, knowing that sure death awaits her, replies, "Anything you want." After a beat of silence, tense and pondering, the voice replies simply, "Let me stay." as a clawed hand extends out of the darkness, signaling for a handshake. And Katie takes it, handshaking, and whispers, "Deal." And that's where our second character, V, comes in. As the smoke fades and time unspools around them, she quickly and viciously disposes of the two agents, before turning back to Katie and properly introducing herself. Some may call her a demon, others a fae, or simply a creature born of magic, but she does not care for human designations. Katie is horrified. She's been witness to violence many times before, seeing as the society she lives in gleefully delivers swift and violent punishment to its citizens, but never at such proximity, and never at her own hand. But she takes a deep breath and steels herself. They have to quickly get rid of the evidence, return to the safety of her apartment, and figure out next steps. Katie burns the bodies with a spell, while V watches, pensive. V pulls her hood up, and in the darkness of the night, they make their way back to Katie's home. After wiping the blood off herself, V warns Katie off of using too much magic at once, as she wants her stay to last. Confused, Katie prods further, to which V gives her a flat look. "Are you unaware of how summoning magic works?" And at Katie's blank stare, she elaborates. "Whoever or whatever you summon is not from this plane. Keeping them here, keeping their plane from claiming them back, like all magic, requires energy. The stronger the caster, the longer you can keep a summon around. But the energy expended eventually outweighs what the user naturally restores." And terrified, Katie comes to the conclusion of the bargain she's agreed to. Letting V stay means that she'll slowly have her energy reserves drained until... How long do I have?" she stammers out. 2 months. Head pounding, Katie starts stammering about how she didn't know the cost, or she would have bargained something else. How the terms, they should have been made clearer. She can offer V things more valuable than her life. But V stares at her, unblinking, and simply states, "A deal cannot be unmade." So that's a little preview of what's going on between these two. And as you can probably tell, I am drawing them just straight up chilling, all buddy-buddy with each other. So, you know, they might work something out, or maybe Katie just tries to make the most of her time, and maybe, I don't know, they kiss a little? Who's to say? Anyways, something I want to work a bit more on is figuring out the magic system for this world. I love intricate and logical magical systems. I love when magic makes sense, when there's a cost to it, and when it has rules, because that means that there's stakes. Your characters can't just wave their hands and fix all their problems. And when someone is training and actively trying to improve their magic, there's something more to it than just believing in yourself or having a natural affinity. When I first created this story, the magic was very inspired by actual Wicca practitioners, but that was mostly just the visual aspects of it and the language and symbols used. So I'd love to revisit it sometime and make something cool that actually meets my standards for a magical system, even if it is simple. With this piece, I wanted to depict a more friendly and somewhat intimate scene. They're just hanging out. Katie's getting ready, and V is asking questions about a million different things she saw the day before. She's a very curious person, and although there were other reasons for her insistence on staying on this plane as long as she physically can, her thirst for knowledge about this world and those who inhabit it is also a big part of it. Looking back at how I drew V in the past, I felt like the whole Cyclops with blue skin and pink hair was a big part of her visual identity. I just wanted to go about it in a way where she didn't clash as hard with her surroundings due to her palette being very saturated. So I toned the colors down a bit, and I dressed her in mostly light colors to contrast more with Katie's goth look. I was also not super satisfied with her clothes, as they felt really plain. Katie already has a very well-established look, kind of like gothy, punkish e-girl, and I wanted V to also have a distinct clothing style. So I shopped around on Pinterest until something caught my eye: deckwear. I thought it all looked really sleek, and it helped with making her stand out more as some sort of other, aside from the obvious one-eye blue skin thing she's got going on. I also saw some really cute hairstyles with these like chunky beaded locks at the front and thinner locks at the back, and I decided to try it out while sketching, and I felt like they really suited her. As for the background, they're in Katie's bathroom. V is in the tub because I thought it would be cute, to be honest, and I also think it works better than having her standing like menacingly somewhere else on the scene. From the beginning, I had this really clear vision for the perspective of the piece. I wanted it to be seen from above, with Katie's face reflected in the mirror. I struggled a little bit at first trying to figure out how to add a 3-point perspective grid to Photoshop, but I managed in the end. Also, yes, I'm still using Photoshop. I tried to start this piece off in Clip Studio, but after so long away from it, I have genuinely just lost all muscle memory for shortcuts, tools, etc. And to be honest, it was making me feel really frustrated. So I swallowed my pride and I opened Photoshop instead. I have to get myself back into Clip Studio with less ambitious projects. I wanted the background to reflect Katie, so I added a bunch of little plants, as green is kind of her main color. And to be honest, I feel like I want to push her towards doing more nature-y, plant-based magic. I had a lot of fun adding wear and tear to the bathroom, as I imagine she's renting out a shitty little one-bedroom apartment, but by God, she treats it well and decorates it to her heart's content. I also wanted to add some little hidden meanings to the piece, because I like that kind of thing. The plant behind V and the plant in front of Katie are slowly reaching out for each other, representing how the two eventually find common ground and develop a friendship. And the plant in the corner near the bathtub has a leaf that's fallen off, representing Katie's supposed eventual death and the overall ephemeral nature of one's life. In terms of color, I wanted it to be very green, in a way that would make V really stand out, to show that she's in Katie's space, literally her bathroom, but also on a broader scale that she's in a plane she doesn't belong to. I laid down all the flat colors and then started playing around with lighting ideas. I wanted it to be a bit dramatic, with a harsh light source either from a window or an open door. I wasn't too happy with how the colors were looking, so I left it alone for a couple of days before coming back to it. I decided to gather a couple of artworks to use as inspiration for dramatic lighting, and then I started coming across some really cool pieces that used very limited color palettes, and so I thought to myself, I want to do something like that, and ended up redoing all the colors completely. I also decided to try recording the speed paint a bit differently, with a separate window being recorded instead of the main screen I'm actually working on, so that it doesn't jump around as much. So let me know if you guys prefer this method for recording my art process. Back to coloring, again, green is still the main color, but V doesn't stand out as much anymore with her very saturated color palette. I'm actually quite proud of myself for eyeballing most of the colors and keeping them in a green, yellow, brown range, but I think V still reads as being blue with pink hair. With the light source, I really wanted Katie and her reflection to be the focal points of the piece, so I tried to play around with light in a way that would achieve that. I started off by first laying down really rough and messy colors to try and figure them out, before doing the light source and the shadows. And then I properly laid down all the flats and started rendering the light a bit more. I also had a black color layer on top of everything that I would switch on and off just to check the values. I did want this illustration to have very low contrast in the areas that weren't in the light, and I wanted to check that the high contrast areas were the ones that I wanted the viewer's eyes to focus on. And here's the finished piece. Overall, I had a lot of fun with it, and I definitely want to do more background-heavy illustrations in the future. I have a lot of OCs that have fallen a bit to the wayside, including some of my D&D OCs. So I do have plans to rework some of their designs and, maybe even tell you a bit more about their stories. I hope you liked this video and that you enjoyed learning more about Katie and V. I hope to see you in my next video. And remember, stay silly!